For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
This week's Law & Order Marathon winner... This week's Law & Order Marathon winner is Lisa Carasquillo. This week's Law & Order Marathon winner is Lisa Carasquillo of Boca Raton, Florida.
Oh, Boca Raton, Florida.
Lisa will get a marathon decal. This week's Law & Order Marathon... Lisa Carasquillo. Carasquillo, Boca Raton. This week's Law & Order Marathon winner is Lisa Carasquillo of Boca Raton, Florida. Lisa will get a marathon decal showing she watched 26.2 hours of her favorite crime show. To be next week's winner, sign up at lawandorderpodcast.com.
I'm Kevin Flynn with Rebecca Lavoie and Brandi Brown. And these are their stories.
You think you know who did it, but you don't know who did it. Law and order, law and order, law and order. It's no ordinary police procedural, baby. It's the FNOG of police procedurals, baby. Law and order, law and order, law and order, law and order. These are their stories, these are their stories.
Welcome to These Are Their Stories, the podcast about network TV's most enduring crime franchise and the real-life cases that inspired their shows. I'm Kevin Flynn. Each podcast will break down an episode from either Criminal Intent, SVU, or Original Recipe. And today, we're looking at Criminal Intent, Season 1, Episode 21, Faith.
She invented a sick child for the attention, for the love.
If somebody like Doug Lafferty gets in the way.
Joining me to do just that is true crime author and the host of Crime Writers On and Netflix's You Can't Make This Up podcasts, Rebecca Lavoie. Hello, Rebecca.
And overaged grad student. You forgot that.
Jesus. You know, there's just some true life there. And rounding out our panel is our special guest comedian and podcaster, Brandi Brown. Hello, Brandi.
Hello.
So they're bringing back one legacy character in the world of Law and Order, and of all of them, it's Stabler. Would he be your first choice?
No. I'm not a big Stabler person, honestly. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, you know what? He'd definitely be on trial right now. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if I can't pick Chester Lake, because he probably hasn't by the way, this occurred to me the other day. If you watch season 1 of SVU,
yeah,
all those people they arrested probably are out now.
It's true.
Even though, go to jail for life, they probably still made parole. They had to make room. It's 20 years is enough.
Yeah.
Several of them probably on the police force.
Yeah.
That's probably right now. All right. But with Law and Order Organized Crime, the thing I'm most excited about is to hear how they reinterpret the theme song.
Oh, God.
With Criminal Intent, they had that guitar, and even SVU was the clarinet.
Yeah.
What are they going to do to mix up?
I think it's going to be...
Don't say a mandolin, because that's just too Italian.
I was going to say something Italian, but then I realized all the mob stories in Law & Order are actually about the Russian mob.
Oh, that's true,
Eastern European
They're scarier.
mobs.
Brandi, aren't they scarier? When you have the Ukrainian mob and their teeth's all messed up?
They also, every time it's the Italian mob, it's always comedy. It's biscuits and books, the most incompetent.
We love this restaurant.
Yeah, is this supplanting the hate crimes one? Because I was just very terrified that one was actually going to happen.
Yeah, it's still a thing, and it's on the back burner, and they're trying to sell it.
Is it about the cops committing hate crimes?
Well, look, sex crimes are pretty bad too, but we've loved it for 21 years. I think there's probably more stories they can make up about people being victims of hate crimes as opposed to how many times can they bust the same gangsters in the new show.
I don't know. There's a lot to organized crime. Remember that animal smuggling episode? That was organized crime.
It kind of was.
With the monkey and the basketball. Exactly.
That's
yeah,
true.
a lot of stuff can fall under RICO. So it's just Law and Order RICO.
Brandi, of all the franchises, which two cops are your favorite detective team?
Favorite Law and Order detective team.
I have two answers here. I've been thinking hard about this. I would say obviously Briscoe and Green are my favorite, but in this Criminal Intent universe, which is also where a lot of my favorite detectives, I'm going to say Stevens and Nichols.
Shit, wow.
That's a deep cut.
Yeah,
That's a
deep
first.
cut.
That is a first, yeah.
I like Bobby Goren alone, but I need a woman who can just be as esoteric and random and smart as the other detective.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like Barrick.
I gotta say,
Yeah.
Eames does just a lot of, especially in this first season, just a lot of nodding while he talks. She's just like,
yeah, she's tired. She's like,
It seems to be her main role.
She's tired. I've had enough. And Brandi, who's your favorite prosecutorial team?
Favorite Law and Order District Attorney Prosecutorial Team.
I gotta go with Jack and Claire. My favorite DA, though, is Adam Schiff because he is always so pained. Like, every time they walk in, he looks like he's about to jump out the window. Jack will be like, hey, Adam. He's like, oh, what now? Yeah. He's like, yeah, just we're ordering Chinese food. He's like, might as well jump out a window. I had pizza. Like, he's always so upset and just depressed. You're like, hey, man.
He's like, he went into the bathroom and forgot to bring his newspaper, but it's too late to go get it. That's what he
Just
always
everything is the worst day of his life. Everything. He's like, well, that's just how life is. Like,
Jack, go back to your office and read the Constitution. All right, now let's take a look at the first half of this episode. Criminal Intent Season 1, Episode 21, Faith. Well, we see book editor Christine Wilkes direct older gentleman caller Doug Lafferty to the home of Toby and Barb Windermere. He's anxious to see young Erica, but Barb says her foster daughter is too insulted at this request. Unable to actually see her, he storms out. The next morning, he's found dead in his burning car in the naughty section of New York City. He was killed with 3 blows to the head with an umbrella.
He wasn't murdered in this location. This bloodstain didn't spatter here when he was killed. It most likely came when his head was resting against the door.
His body was moved into the passenger seat after he was killed.
The killer then drove him here, put him back behind the wheel, set him on fire to destroy evidence he was killed elsewhere.
Goren and Eames learned that the widower had been withdrawing large sums recently from the bank account, and his son spotted him buying jewelry at a fancy store. It had been a woman's watch with an expandable wristband because Erica, its recipient, has a disability. Lafferty also paid for a pink motorized wheelchair for a 14-year-old girl. In total, he bought $30,000 worth of medical equipment for the girl diagnosed with ALS, who people know through her life-affirming blog and her best-selling book with the shitty cover. Her book editor is Christine, who says Erica is an inspiration, but they've only talked on the phone or exchanged emails. Now, in her book, Erica says she's hiding with her foster family because of her abusive criminal parents and their friends, but child welfare has no record of her. Responding to an email from Eames, the girl telephones into Deacon's office and gives more of her life-affirming bullshit. That's when Goren does the creepiest thing ever. He asks a 14-year-old girl about her period. And that's the end of that fucking call. Convinced she doesn't know how ALS actually affects the body, Goren declares that little girl that no one has ever seen is a fake. All right, killed with an umbrella. We're looking for the Penguin, Batman.
I just have questions about the car fire, because like the sex workers walk by and then it's a pretty sizable car fire. Then someone's like, wait a minute. And then they turn around. Like,
why do you have to make it so complicated, you fat moron? Last time I checked, all the parts fit together. You don't have to be so damn complicated. Oh my God! Oh,
it seemed like someone just threw a Molotov cocktail into the car as they walked by, but it's not clear when it was set on fire or like how they didn't notice this very quickly.
Right, they say that what happened was that the body was doused with nail polish remover, had a butane canister of something in its pocket, and that the killer just lit the coat on fire and walked away. However, it seems like the killer was able to make it to the Long Island Railroad before the fire actually started.
Yeah, I don't understand the logistics of that, and I also don't understand why
it should have been like Stella gets her groove back. You should have been like right there, boom!
Oh, like the throwing the thing over the
it should have been that fast.
Yeah. Also, why is it always like sex workers who have to find things on this show? Like, why?
It's joggers or...
Yeah.
One of the cops called her Lucy Hot Pants, but her name in the credits is actually Trixie. So to be
Trixie,
it's way more considerate.
Yeah, they like pulled that name out of like the catalog of prostitute names that they just keep in the writer's room.
You think if your mom names you Trixie, you're doomed?
I mean, sex workers never find the crime, or they never like the witness like, yep, they totally saw it. Like it's why would you do this broad daylight? Just a lot of criminal logistical questions here.
Agreed.
Now, first, Goren explains his criminal profile of the killer.
She had excellent improvisational skills. She created an incendiary device. She relocated the body to a high crime area.
For all the good it did her, she might as well have left him in the garage.
Then Deacon points out that, she could have just left the body in the garage, and Goren goes, oh, no, wait, that.
That's the point. She overthought the event.
He's so full of shit. It was like, no, not that other thing. That sounds way better.
Why didn't she leave the body in the garage? Did we ever find that out?
Because, as Goren says, she overthought it. Well, you would know, Goren. Overthinking everything.
Literally.
Yeah, and then also with the laptop they found, they held it up and they're like,
Somebody defragged his computer to wipe out files.
she defragged it to erase it. I'm like, that's not how she just ran the defrag program. What? She just cleaned up the hard drive. That's
Exactly.
it.
No,
Exactly.
it actually works faster now.
And also just take the laptop. Why would you just sit there? Just take it. You killed a man. That's like the least of your worries.
Blow up the laptop, too. It's a laptop.
Exactly.
It's not a desktop where you have to, pull the router out and all this other stuff. So they visit the jewelry store, and they have questions about the watch band.
Switched it with an expansion band.
It's easier to take on and off. He said that the lady might find a band with the clasp too difficult to use. I think she had a little handicap with her right hand.
Oh, you do, Girl Scout Goren. Again, just sort of the wild-ass suppositions that we've come to expect from Criminal Intent.
Yes. But I do have a question about the watch purchase.
Yeah.
Without spoiling the second half of the episode,
Rebecca, this episode is 20 years old.
Okay.
You can spoil it.
If the whole idea is these people get expensive things to sell them, wouldn't a custom expandable band and an inscription make that less valuable for them? Why would they want that?
I don't think he asked for this.
Yeah, I think they're just committing to the bit. They're like, sure, why not? Just send us this thing.
Oh, yeah, she'll wear it. She needs a watch because she's so busy. Gotta check the time. Oh, gotta go post on my blog.
Gotta go say something inspiring.
That's right.
I also find it weird that an investigative journalist would send that much money without doing investigating until that point. I just feel like the first $10,000, he's like, wait a minute. You're not going over $1,000 without an investigation.
Right.
I just don't buy that.
Yeah, he'd already made several payments on the wheelchair before he went, wait a sec. I feel like I might be getting taken.
So I have another question.
Go for it.
I don't mean to sound insensitive, but why, the fancy custom pink seated wheelchair if this person never leaves the house? What does it matter what a wheelchair looks like? Wouldn't a plain wheelchair have been just fine?
Yeah, it's weird that, did they send the dimension? Why would they just take cash? This is so weird. Because if you send a custom wheelchair, that is, again, they made up fake dimensions for this person. Now they have to sell a fancy pink child's wheelchair. You can't, offload that. That's hard to fence.
All right, let's take a look at the cast. We have a Hey, It's That Girl.
Hey, it's that girl.
So does anybody know who's playing Barb Windermere, the stepmom?
What's wrong with you that makes you want to destroy someone good like Erica?
No, but I'm pretty sure I've seen her on a Law and Order show before.
Yeah.
Does that count?
Yeah, I mean, her name is... obviously, her name is Mia Dillon. 6 Law and Order Universe appearances.
6 is a lot.
Yeah, she was in All Good Things and more recently... Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. I don't like saying the most interesting thing about a woman is who she's married to.
But in this case, it's true.
Well, in the entertainment world, right? Her husband is Keir Dullea. He was Dave Bowman in 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Huh. Dave? The guy
Hal
the computer
says,
talked to?
I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave.
Oh.
I'm afraid I can't let you make up a fake girl and sell her on the internet.
Is that why he married somebody with such an unsoothing voice? Because he had too much of that?
God damn it. Oh, it freaks me out. We do have a repeat offender.
Repeat offender.
We see Adam LaFave as Toby, the stepdad.
She said she talked to you, didn't she?
12 Law and Order appearances.
Big face guy,
Each one of them with 3 lines, and that's it. He was on Law and Order's Divorce episode and SVU's Chat Room, both of which we covered. You called him what, Mr. Fat Face?
I call him Mr. Big Face.
He's got a big face.
He looks like he looks like the villain in the first Incredibles movie. Like a giant
in real
face.
life?
I mean, he's not like a big guy, but his face is just disproportionate. He would benefit from some well-placed facial hair, I think.
Yeah, he's got eternal baby face.
Exactly. You know, he looked exactly like that. Like if you look at his 4th grade school.
Yeah, I looked up
that's that guy.
I looked him up on IMDb and I was like, he's that old? Like, he's like pretty old.
Jeez. Who's playing Mr. Green, the book publisher?
Since it came out last fall, it's been one of our biggest sellers, which surprised me. It was pretty raw when we got it. Thank God for editors.
You went right by, never noticed?
Nope.
That's character actor Bill Raymond. He had supporting roles in Lincoln and 12 Monkeys. But Rebecca, you will remember him from HBO's Mrs. Fletcher.
Oh, God.
He's Roy, the old man that Catherine Hahn is really attached to, but had to kick him out of the senior center because he was jerking off during the afternoon movie.
Yeah. I remember that.
You remember that?
There are a lot of things about that show that I remember, not necessarily voluntarily.
Brandi, have you ever seen that show, Mrs. Fletcher?
I don't think I have. I think I saw like one episode because Catherine Hahn, of course.
Yes,
but
she's amazing. All she does in the show is masturbate. That's literally the whole show. Is just
till she gets to the threesome at the end.
Many episodes of her just masturbating is pretty much the whole show.
You know what? That I actually, now that you said that, I was like, yes, I actually remember that. Okay, yes, I do.
I do remember that. Kind of a hypocrite to kick out the old man for masturbating.
I know. Literally all she does.
Yeah, grinding on a pillow or something like that. But can you tell us, who is the actress playing Christine Wilkes, the book editor?
I'll tell you what I hope. I hope that I never lose faith in one of the kindest, most spiritual human beings I have ever met. You're not just betraying Erica, you're betraying all children.
Finally.
You want to take it?
Yes.
I'm not going to let you. Brandi,
I'm
you know the name
old, so
like, she looks familiar, and I was skimming IMDb, and I'm sure once you said it, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
So I know this because I'm older than you. That's the only reason why I know it. That's Polly Draper, who was became famous in the show 30-something, in which she played the sexy friend, not the quirky friend, who was played by Melanie Mayron. She played the sexy friend.
Yeah, Ellen.
Yeah.
Nominated for an Emmy Award for that role. She's now 60-something instead of 30-something. That's okay. We all age.
I think I was like 20 early something or teen something when that came out.
And it started in 1987 was when that...
Oh, I was 14.
Yeah,
I was 6.
Well, look, her husband was Arsenio Hall's band leader, and that's how they met. And along with her sons Nate and Alex Wolf, they created the hit music show for Nickelodeon called The Naked Brothers Band.
Really?
Which sounds like something that should not be on Nickelodeon.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, Picture Pages with Bill Cosby was on Nickelodeon. They're lawless, so.
They're lawless. Like, might as well strip away the facade and just...
and my all-time favorite show, iCarly, in which kids just randomly beat each other up all the time.
And they drink Pepsi Cola.
Exactly.
Gibby. Okay, by the way, she is the descendant of Francis Cook, who came over on the Mayflower.
Oh, fucking of course.
Just
Jesus
like
Christ.
I did.
She looks like the woman who's on that show on Hallmark, The Good Witch. Like, she looks like several other Hollywood actors. Like,
She does.
that's why I was like, is that no?
She was also a very early adopter of the buff physique. She had it, you know how she has it in this episode?
Yeah.
She had it back in the 80s, and that, like, women didn't look like that in the 80s. Not until Linda Hunt did Terminator did women look like, with the arms and the shoulders and everything.
Was she, like, beating people up on 30-something, or what?
No. I just think she wore a lot of, like, sleeveless things to show off those guns.
Oh, okay.
Never skips arm day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about the book? Through the Darkness?
Through the Darkness.
Everybody knows about that book. Carver knows about that book. Like,
EMTs know about the book.
Oh, the EMT was the best.
She's already been through a lot. I mean, you read the book?
Yeah, sure. The book my partner hasn't.
Well, you should. It's so right on.
He's been after me to get into it. What's it called again?
Yeah, we're trying to lay low, and that's why we have a national bestseller.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
All right, Erica calls Deacon's office and on the speakerphone asks Eames if she has children.
Alex, do you have any kids?
No.
Your voice reminds me of my kindergarten teacher. It's a very warm voice, like you spend a lot of time talking to kids. I hope you have some someday.
Well, I hope you have kids someday, or at least be a surrogate mother for your sister in season 3 to explain your on-camera pregnancy. Which was already a stretch. Well, you think like they were gonna like do the Olivia Benson thing with her, or just like, oh, her subplot is, I mean, we know that she's a widow. Her husband was a cop killed in the line of duty. Are they going to like, oh, she just wants to have a kid for the next couple of seasons?
So boring.
This part is where I really was like, this episode should have been way shorter at the point that she called a police station. They can't trace that. No one can figure out where that's coming from. Like, they're doing a lot of extra detective work when even back then they had the tools to figure out who that was.
Exactly.
Yeah, burner phone or, She doesn't have that motorized wheelchair. She didn't get to a phone booth.
Yeah.
And so to see if she actually knows anything about ALS effects on teenagers, Goren asks one of the most cringeworthy things about her period.
How has ALS affected your menstruation?
You mean...
Well, I don't want to embarrass you. In your book, you're very frank about your development as a young woman. If it makes you uncomfortable,
It's not that.
If you, dear listener, could see the look on Deacon's face.
And his one eye, his eye patch.
No, you're thinking of Raw. Oh, no, that was later on, right? Yeah. No. He looked up like, you are fucking kidding me. Because America was like, you are fucking kidding me.
Well, what makes it extra creepy is he used the word menstruation, which is like not a word anybody uses unless it's like in a weird like sex ed or medical situation. But wouldn't you think that these fakers would have at least done like a tiny bit of research if they're going to do this years-long fraud?
I think that's why he had to ask such a weird question, because that isn't a thing anyone would research, really.
Right.
So, like, if you ask anything, he also, like, that's not, no tact. You got to, like, slip that in and be like, hey, you know, when I did this, or I saw someone who did this, and then make up a lie about someone else with ALS that they knew and catch them in a lie.
Deacon says something like,
if I hadn't heard it with my own ears.
well, it was a legitimate question.
No, it isn't.
They never explain why, though. What does ALS do to a teenager and their menstruation?
He's like, it doesn't matter. The answer was that she couldn't answer it.
I think it does. I think they kind of did address it. I think he's like, basically like, it shouldn't have any impact. It doesn't matter. Like, that's why he said it. And if she was like stumbling on it.
Yeah. The answer is like, well, it's heavy, detective. It's extra heavy with unusual spotting. Are you happy now? All right, let's take a look at the second half of this episode. Posing as a grad student, Eames approaches Professor David Cantler, who wrote the introduction to Erica's book, to see if he knows anything.
You see, I want to interview Erica for my thesis, and if you could help me...
Yes, well, I have a confession to make. It wasn't possible to actually meet with her.
But your introduction...
Yes, I know, a little poetic license. I went to meet her, but her health was so fragile, she just wasn't strong enough.
But you got to see where she lived.
Yes, I did that, but...
My thesis partner.
I'm Detective Robert Goren. How you doing?
He takes the detectives to the Windermere's home, but they've recently moved out. As Goren points out, there had never been any bed or medical equipment in the room. That's when Cantler realizes he's been had. Just like Lafferty, he had bought expensive medical equipment for the girl that's now vanished. Barb and Toby also had Erica's admirers pay for her medication, money that the crooked pharmacist would just forward to the Windermeres. That's how they capture the couple who say Erica is safe someplace with friends that they can't name either. Goren says that they checked the serial numbers on the gravel from the driveway, and it matches the serial numbers on the gravel found in Lafferty's tires. Well, it's clear they made up Erica, but Goren isn't convinced that they actually killed the old man. The first drafts of that book were punched up with greatly flourished passages by its editor, Christine, who refuses to believe anything other than Erica is real. She admits driving Doug to their home, but not to killing him. Carver tells the Windermeres that Lafferty left $2 million to Erica and her guardians, but a murder conviction would nullify that, unless Christine comes to the squad to complain that the seizure of Erica's royalties will leave her destitute. And that's when a call comes in from the teen herself. And by that, I mean Barb using her stupid Erica voice. She tells Christine her $2 million inheritance would be voided if Barb goes down for the crime. And driven by her belief that this beautiful sunbeam of a fake child must be protected, Christine confesses to murdering Lafferty with the umbrella and setting the fire, all because Doug didn't believe the girl was real.
That is a lot.
Who got the last laugh on that?
That might be the longest synopsis of half of an episode I've ever heard you read. That is a lot.
A lot happens in these Criminal Intent episodes you can't skip over. So Eames goes undercover as a grad student. She gets this. Mom goes back to school to finish her degree bomber jacket.
Yes, and the sweater with the cruel embroidery on it. So young and fresh.
She's a hippie. Olivia Benson always has her undercover wardrobe so that she could look like either a swinger or a madam.
She does this thing. Brandi, did you notice this? She walks into the school to talk to the professor in her student clothes. She pretends for 4 seconds that she needs to talk to him about a paper, and then they reveal themselves to be cops immediately. What is the point of the outfit or the ruse?
I think Goren and Eames actually want to do improv. I am convinced about this, and the reason why is the episode later on with the J. Moore fashion thing, and Goren is pretending. I don't know if you've done this episode or not, but there's one where he's pretending to be a fashion house calling, and he's clearly enjoying that. They clearly love to just do bits. They're like the Sklar brothers of crime.
So we know this professor teaches at Hudson.
We are Hudson, where the bad guys go to school.
It's obvious because a faculty member at Hudson would be okay with making up a story for the book. It's absolutely on point. And then they get to that empty house and he tries to out-intellect Goren with some obscure philosophical argument.
There's a theorem, Gödel's great incompleteness theorem. Every axiomatic system will contain truths that
cannot be proven. But the absence of proof can be proof.
And of course, Goren already knows it and just finishes it for him, Goodwill Hunting style. She's like, my boy's wicked smart. How do you like them apples?
Apparently this professor is famous, so famous that Goren knows who he is and what he wrote. And
what department is he in?
Genetics or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
He's got 2 bestsellers and 4 ex-wives that they knew immediately.
First of all, that is definitely a humanities or building. I don't know. I just, as a liberal arts person, that's definitely humanities building, the energy coming from that.
Nobody who wants to play the guitar is also studying DNA sequences.
That's right. And no student of genetics would be wearing that hippie jacket and that cruel embroidery sweater. Just saying.
She's definitely made it.
She
looked
like she was going to a writing seminar. We all know what she was doing.
Well, she only had to do the facade for 45 seconds. She just, I never saw her. So
she just wanted an excuse to wear jeans to work that day.
That's right. The rest of the episode, it's like she's still dressed down. She just took the funky jacket off.
If he's I'm still hung up on him being a professor of genetics with no questions. None.
That's
None. Agrees to write this. Very rare for a female to get this at this age, especially. Outstanding work. He's definitely had articles retracted. I can already tell.
Yeah. Yep. Can you imagine a geneticist writing 1 bestseller, let alone 2?
No.
I mean, they better be romance novels. Who would I want to
or
see.
a collaboration with Mary Roach or something.
Exactly. So I have a question as a former Long Islander.
Yeah.
How the hell are we supposed to believe that they found that house just by driving around after going to a
That's
Long
what
Island
I was
railroad
wondering
stop?
about. That's so much
If you've ever been to Long Island, every house in every neighborhood looks the same. In almost every town in Long Island, it's split level, or Victorian. There is no neighborhood where it's distinct enough where you could just drive around and find a house that looks like the house you were in.
No, but Goren's look for one with this special white gravel.
They didn't blindfold him. They just drove him around for an hour.
Disoriented him.
Yeah.
He's from there. But I feel like unless you have some really bad sense of direction, you can generally
we just made 4 lefts.
Figure out where you're going. You're all right, it was by the Super America, I don't know. I feel like you've got to blind someone if you're just going to drive them around. A lot of OPSEC in this. A lot of OPSEC in this.
Yeah, you definitely can fake somebody out driving them to a house, but when you leave into the daylight, it's Appleton Street. God damn it. The detectives think that there may be a reason that Christine refuses to believe Erica's fake, and it has something to do about children.
You had a scare last summer. One of your coworkers told us you had a bad pap smear.
I had a precancerous cervical condition, which I was treated for. Not that it's any of your business.
She's like, that's none of your business. Well, it's none of your coworkers' business either.
Who's just drops over by the coffee? You're like, listen, she's been going through some bad pap smear shit.
Yeah. Look, the only coworker we saw was that old publisher guy. Why would she tell him?
I don't know.
He doesn't even know what a pap smear is.
She's probably really loud on the phone or something. It's very hysterical, like, oh, bad pap smear!
I gotta say, like, if you live to be old enough, like me, at some point you'll have a pap smear where they're like, we need to do it again. Like, we saw something weird. But
I've had that already.
It's not fine. Did it cause you to have an existential crisis that would make you believe in a fraud like this?
No, I was just like, oh man, I do not have time for cancer. Like, that's really
It's very inconvenient.
Yeah.
So that bad pap smear. Well, it's heavy, detective. It's extra heavy with unusual spotting.
Yes.
Again.
All
up in lady parts.
Really? Yeah, a lot of that.
Who wrote this, and are they going through menopause? Like, that's my question. This is a lot of like, oh, someone's going through it and working it out on the screen. Okay.
Yeah. All that period nostalgia that lady has.
So the plan is to facilitate the Windermere's committing insurance fraud. But they're not actually going to let him commit insurance fraud. That's more of a season 4 plot hole as opposed to a season 1 plot hole.
The money was to be held in trust with your client as trustee.
$2 million to spend any way she wanted.
The best part of it is you would have been able to keep all of it without ever having to prove that Erica exists.
A murder conviction will, of course, void the policy. Crime isn't supposed to pay.
Did you guys notice that the insurance policy was actually a booklet that said insurance policy on the cover?
Yeah.
Fancy, like, academic script writing.
Somebody went to a desktop publisher and said, chick, okay, old English fonts.
Microsoft Works.
Yeah, Microsoft Works.
That's right for the era, because we see Erica's computer is one of those clamshells. Remember those?
Yeah. Of course, they said they can't find anything of Erica's except for this laptop with like all this girls crap on it. It's like, Erica. That's apparently how Barb wrote the manuscript.
The blog.
The blog. So we keep getting these phone calls from apparently a young-sounding woman.
Yes.
They keep putting her on speakerphone.
Yeah, so they put her on speakerphone when she calls the police station and, talks to Polly Draper. And she hangs up because she gets very upset.
You're the only one I have left, Christine.
Fine. What? Erica?
Erica?
And then there's a dial tone. We all know what that sounds like. Boo. And Polly Draper continues to scream, Erica? Erica! Erica! And everyone's like, Erica! And I'm like, it's fucking dial tone. You guys know.
You know she's hung up by now, right?
You can't come back. It's not like you've been put on hold and you can come back. You can't come back when someone has hung up the phone.
Even in the pre super internet sleuthing days, this didn't even make sense.
So ultimately, I guess their criminal scam is to fence used medical equipment, including a child-sized pink motorized wheelchair with a left-handed joystick. I know, who the hell buys that? I mean, other than cheap old men who are trying to, get up on an imaginary teenager.
Yeah, it's just, why would you not just ask for cash and then make up a lie? As you're like, oh, well, it's really hard to customize it, and we would tell you where, but that's too much private information about her, and like the doctor, just get cash. Like, they are doing a lot of extra catfishing work that nobody needs to do.
I actually have a theory that didn't happen, but what would be a good scheme was if that same wheelchair sales guy just kept selling the same wheelchair over and over again and giving half the money to the people.
Yeah, it's like when you go to the fence with your 4th respirator. Isn't even the fence going to be like, look, I know people bring stolen weird shit to me, but what the hell?
Yeah, that actually would be a good fraud. But again, there are just so many people how did he even get into the scheme? Like... Yeah. You got to find like a real shade, like, hey, doc, listen, do you know anyone who might be interested in some side gigs with selling children's wheelchairs? Like, what?
Right. And it's like, think about the customer for that. They have to have enough money to buy it, but not have insurance that will cover it. So, it's a very narrow lane of people that would buy that used motorized wheelchair.
The foster care system provides for children. Like, you get money. And like people would be like, well, why isn't foster care paying for this? Like that would be the question that most people who would do any amount of research would ask.
Because,
but investigative journalists and PhDs, they're not thinking ahead.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, you're right.
They don't think at all.
And Erica's too much of a special snowflake to have a regular foster chair wheelchair. She needs a special one.
I mean, but not even the fence, like the people buying. Like, who wants used medical equipment?
Yeah.
Like, if I had to buy a respirator for my mom, I would get something new. If I had to buy it for you, Brandi, I would get you a rusty iron lung from the abandoned Victorian Hospital outlet store. All right, let's take a look at the real-life story that inspired this episode. It's time for a rip from the headlines.
You think you know who did it. You think you know who did it. But you don't know who did it. You don't know who did it. Rip from the headlines.
This episode is drawn from the real-life story of Debbie Swenson. In 1999, the Oklahoma woman learned her teenage daughter created an online persona for a made-up basketball player named Casey Nicole. Instead of making her delete it, Swenson took over the site and began posting as Casey. After the family moved to Kansas, Casey became a popular figure online. Visitors loved her blog, in which she wrote uplifting stories of being a high school senior. Then Casey told an online friend she had leukemia, and they started a new blog to document her health struggles. Millions of people read her stories and were inspired by the teen's courage. Gifts and cards were sent to a local post office box. In 2001, Swenson posted Casey died unexpectedly and had been immediately cremated. Other bloggers smelled a rat. The post office box had been discontinued. No obituary had been published. Sleuths traced the blog's IP address to Swenson's town and discovered Casey's profile picture was of an athlete at her daughter's old school. Debbie Swenson fessed up to the hoax, much to the anger of the online community. The FBI investigated whether she broke any financial laws for accepting the gifts, but they declined to prosecute.
So some might also recognize the similarities in the story in this episode to the film and novel The Night Listener, starring Robin Williams, a similar tale of a boy who wrote a memoir of his horrible life, but no one had actually ever seen him. That also happened in real life. This is considered an early case of Munchausen by internet, is how they called it, but I'd say you only have to watch one episode of Catfish to know this was bullshit. What, you looking for Eddie? And, oh, he died, girl. He died.
I love what, like, they're all, anytime these catfishing things happen, it's all people who are, like, really good at, like, writing a story but don't know how to end it. It's like Game of Thrones. It's just like, they really built the plot. They're like, she died, cremated, the end. I don't know, something to come.
Yeah, I mean, real person or fake, if you have to say, we cremated her the same day.
Immediately.
Something is shady.
Yeah, that's a red flag for me.
Yeah. If you died and I had you cremated later that day,
yeah,
I might be getting a call from the police. That was quite sudden, Mr. Flynn.
Anytime these people get caught and they're really into it, like sometimes they'll be like, I just got caught up in this one story when I was just like, look, like those one-off people do exist, but they're often the people who like keep traveling from town to town and like pretending to have leukemia. Like they get into it, and it's absolutely wild. So this person, I'm wondering if she's still out there operating a grift.
Yeah, she probably is.
I tried to find a where is she now. I mean, it's been 20 years. She's kept a very low digital profile.
Wouldn't you?
I mean, maybe she changed her name, but I could not locate her because I do like to say, oh, yeah, she's a plumber now or whatever.
Yeah.
So this scam started to fall apart when the administrator of that blog, she had said that she's losing the battle with leukemia and he really wanted to meet her before she died and was like, oh, okay, that kind of pushed it along where we had to extract ourselves from this story.
Administrator of the blog? This is like pre-Tumblr, I guess, then, huh?
1990. That was all, HTML code. Yeah, right.
So on like in the early days of Twitter, when I was on my locked account, the Brandi, I had encountered this woman who was very into like stand-up comedy, and she was really nice and she knew some of the comics I knew and wasn't trying to like finesse or grift or anything, but she mentioned she'd had cancer and stuff like that, and you just form Twitter relationships with people. You care about them, you're worried about them, and so she said that she was going to be getting treatment in a hospital that's like within 4 hours of the Twin Cities. So I was like, well, maybe I can come down there. And I sent her, I was on this album compilation of comics, and I knew she was a comedy fan, and she like, other comics had met her before, so she's real. That is confirmed. And I was like, I'll just send you, this comedy album. I mean, like, she never asked for money or anything, and talking to her was enjoyable, but she had pretty severe cancer from what I heard. You just follow in touch with people online, and I was like, I wonder what happened to her. I hope she's okay. And so this like thing with her, like when I last talked to her, was like maybe like 8 years ago. So during the panty, I was like, I wonder how she's doing. She's okay. Because typically, even if there's like a comedy super fan who dies, and like, especially like people who do the clubs, like somebody will mention it and be like, oh, this person died. They loved comedy. So I did some Googling and I like found her name and I was like, oh, she's like, her name came up in the context. And this is where it gets buck wild. In the context of someone pulling a similar, like a catfish scheme on her, and her family had sued this person. So I was like, what? Maybe. And I was like, hold on, maybe I was never speaking to this woman. I was speaking to the person who was catfishing her. So I was like, really like on Twitter, I was like, what's going on here? And, you know, the woman had been running her grift and like had stayed with the person I thought I was talking to.
Wow. It was a scam inside a scam.
Wait, this keeps going. Okay. This goes deep, y'all. So I did the research and I was tweeting about it and I mentioned the comedy club where she allegedly was. So somehow the booker for that comedy club is like, hey, found me and like emailed me like, can you call me? Like he literally said, call me now. And I was like, yeah. So I told him the story and he's like, oh no, the person you're speaking to is real. That actually happened to her. But also, she has been telling people that story too. So it seems like a situation where a catfisher got catfished too.
Wow.
And so that like lawsuit really did happen to her. It was a legitimate thing. She would always talk about having cancer with people. And I'm like, oh, so this story she's told me about fainting during a show happened. They're like, yeah, that happened. But like, it wasn't like ever, we just kind of humored her, and her family does like a lot of stuff for the community and stuff. But like, she never took money from people or anything. So it's like everyone's like, we'll humor you. You clearly need this emotional thing. I wasn't even mad. I'm like, but she's alive. And I'm like, they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. Like that's all I cared about. It was a double catfish. And I was just like, I'm glad she's okay. I mean, she's clearly not okay, but physically fine. So yeah, that was a wild thing that happened.
It's a really long game because you have to make somebody love you before they'll care about your cancer, right? Your fake cancer.
Right.
So I just wonder if you're already getting the positive attention from having made people love you, like she did on the first version of the blog, like why does it all of a sudden have to turn into like something as intense as making up fake cancer stories?
Well, I think that was the fact that the administrator got in, and I have a lot of questions for this administrator that seemed to like push them into almost the blog.
Yeah. Well, apparently, Casey told this, online fan that, I have leukemia, and so it was his idea. Let's work on this together. We'll create a new blog. It'll talk about your journey fighting cancer, and it'll be beautiful.
Meanwhile, Casey was just trying to ghost him by saying cancer.
She's like, I gotta write my way out of this scam somehow.
Now you're doing a podcast with the guy that you should have just muted on Twitter.
How come you never turn your camera on Zoom when you do this? That is going to do it for us. Want to thank our special guest, Brandi Brown. Brandi, where can our listeners follow you online?
I'm on Twitter at It's the Brandi, ITS the Brandi with an I, all one word. And I've got a show upcoming at Flappers, virtual comedy show on the 10th of April. So you can, Flappers Comedy, just Google for that.
And Rebecca Lavoie, how can our listeners follow you?
Twitter and Instagram, it's really me, I promise, at Reb Lavoie.
Actually, it's me doing two voices. And you can track me on Twitter at Kevin P. Flynn. You can also tweet to us at Law and Order Pod or follow us on Instagram at These Are Their Stories Podcast. Our newsreader was Cy Frater. Our theme music was composed and performed by Uncanny Valleys. Line editing by Henry Lavoie. Content assistance from Travis Roy. Lily Flynn handles promotions. To get ad-free episodes of These Are Their Stories a week early, sign up for Stitcher Premium. All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act Fair Use Exemption for criticism and commentary. Special thanks to the elite squad of the Law & Order Wiki community for preserving the evidence. Go to lawandorderpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter and a chance to be our next Law & Order Marathon winner. These Are Their Stories was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio and is a production of Partners in Crime Media.
Partners in Crime Media.